I'm Harriet, and Sarah's my mentor for the Leadership Academy, and I'm privileged to have started my mentoring sessions with her to develop my leadership skills. Sarah was part of St Mary's College when she was at Durham, and progressed her career to achieve her current position as the first female official solicitor in 150 years.
Thank you, Harriet, for that introduction. Thank you very much, Sarah, for joining us this evening. As I understand it, you want to run the session as it is and questions at the end. Is that correct?
That's great. That would be my preferred option, Chantal. Thank you so much. And Harriet, thank you. That was lovely to be introduced by you, and a real surprise. So thank you for doing that. So good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Castle. As Chantal said, this is my first year as part of the leadership programme, and I'm absolutely delighted to be with you this evening and to be part of it. So I'd actually like to talk to you about my role and what that involves, and then also to talk about the leadership challenges that I face as a female and more generally. So I want to share my personal experience with you this evening, and I hope that you find it interesting and that you'll take some useful things away with you. So I've prepared some slides because I find it more easier actually to talk in these circumstances and to ground what I'm saying by going through a presentation. So I hope that you share that. So I was at Durham in the mid-80s. That seems an awful long time ago now, but I absolutely loved my time at Durham, and I'm thrilled to have reconnected in this way. So Matteo, just moving on to just a little bit about me. So I'm a solicitor. It's in the title, the official solicitor. So I was admitted in 1994, and I've practiced my whole career in either local or central government. So I'm a public servant at heart. I've actually never had any interest of going into private practice. And for years, I specialised in child protection and adoption. And I would spend my days as a solicitor advocate in court on my feet most of the time. Having left Durham, I started my career, my articles with Kent County Council. I stayed there a couple of years and then moved to Berkshire, where I remained very happily until I took up my post of OS in 2019. I actually didn't make it into management until 2012. Prior to that, I was doing the cases, and then I managed a large legal local government team from 2012 in Berkshire. I was born and brought up in the Midlands, and then I made my way to St Mary's because my headmistress at the time called me into her study and said, "Sarah, I think you should go to St Mary's in Durham." And I didn't question it. I thought, fair enough, if that's what you think is the right fit for me. And actually it was a very happy time. My headmistress was absolutely right. And I've now ended up living in Henley in Oxfordshire with my husband and two stepchildren. So that's just a little bit of by way of background. So Matteo, moving on to just a little bit about what is the official solicitor and public trustee. As has been said in my very lovely introductions, I am the First Lady to be the official solicitor, and that's quite strange to me that it's taken so long, but it really has, and I'm very proud and feel very privileged to hold the position. I am a civil servant. I'm appointed directly in both roles as OS and separately public trustee by the Lord Chancellor, and I have the articles of appointment hanging in my house, and it was David Gauke, who was the Lord Chancellor at the time, and who I'm very pleased to say signed my articles. So I want to show you now, this always amuses me, a picture of some photographs of the first public trustee in the bowler hat and the first official solicitor, the gentleman on the right, and then the look now of the OSPT. And you can see that it's very, very different. And every time I look at that photo of me, I think I must get that changed. It was taken in my kitchen very late one night. They wanted a picture and photo, and there it is. So that's on my to-do list. So if we move on. So just a little bit about the history, because I think this is lovely. The first mention of the role of the official solicitor can be seen in Samuel Pepys' diary. So you can see how long ago that is. And those of you who know London and know legal London will know of Chancery Lane. And in Chancery Lane sits the magnificent Law Society building. And if you have ever had the chance to visit it, it is absolutely gorgeous. And the Law Society it sits on the original site of the official solicitor's office, and it was then known as the Six Clerks Office. And there's actually a bar in the Law Society that's named the Six Clerks Bar. And I love that. Every time I go into the Law Society, and I often have meetings there, I smile to myself that this is where it all started. The Office of the Public Trustee was a little bit later than the OS, but again, a very important public office, very much so at the beginning. It was set up to administer estates where there was no one else to administer, and also it played a very prominent role in national disasters because it would administer the disaster funds, and a very famous one was the Titanic. So you can see the history behind the respective roles. And the two positions were separate, with separate run offices, until 2016, when they were brought together, and I'm very happy that they were. So just moving on to talk about what does the OS do. A lot of you may not have heard of the official solicitor. Some of you who are studying law maybe will have done, or hopefully will do as part of your studies, but I play a very important role, in my view, in the British legal framework, because I represent people who lack the mental capacity to give instructions to their lawyers. So they must have an impairment of brain functioning. So it can be through dementia, it can because they've had a serious road accident, for instance. It can be that they have long-term drug and alcohol misuse problems. It can be that they have severe autism. So you get the picture of the problems that some people face. They're involved in litigation and they can't give the instructions. So I literally stand in their shoes and I give the instructions to the lawyers. Some of the work I do in-house, and some lawyers up and down the country are representing me, and my office gives those instructions on the client's behalf. I talked there a little bit about the role of the public trustee, and if someone who's died doesn't have anyone to administer their estate, then I will similarly stand in their shoes and look after their affairs. I've put at the bottom there, who is P? P in my world means protected party. So if you see that in any reports, because these cases are often reported nationally in the media, then that's what P stands for. So a little bit about my office and the office that I lead. I feel I'm very fortunate to lead a government department comprising of 138 staff, 20 of whom are lawyers, and many have been in OSPT for many years. They come and they don't go anywhere because the work is extremely high caliber work. I'm supported very well by 2 deputy OSs and 1 deputy public trustee. And my business is divided into 3 core areas: litigation, trust and estates, and international work. So I have 2 international teams at the moment, and I'm about to acquire a 3rd. A large part of my work is litigation based. That's divided into civil, of which I deal with 35 different types of civil litigation. Family, which is divided into private and public, public being care proceedings. And the court of protection work, which is divided into healthcare and welfare and property and affairs. So you can see that we do deal with a huge variety of work, mainly in the civil arena. So moving on. So I just wanted to share this with you because this is, it may not occur, but we have dealt with some very famous estates over the years, well-known film stars, authors, aristocracy. You know, we've always got some interesting cases in our filing cabinet. And something which is lovely, which we have in the office, is a fantastic scrapbook which captures all the press cuttings over the years, and particularly the role of the public trustee. And in there sits very proudly all the press cuttings about the Titanic and various other public disasters such as Aberfan and various air crashes. And it's the public trustee had a very high profile in its day. And when we have visitors, and we have quite a lot of foreign judges actually who are visiting the UK, and they often come and visit us in OSPT, and it's lovely to show them our scrapbook with a cup of tea. So I wanted also to tell you about quite an unusual feature of my job. And when I applied for the role of OS, I had no idea that I would become a trustee of Chequers. And I'm sure that is familiar to many of you on the call. So the Chequers estate was bequeathed by the Lee family 100 years ago. And the Lee family left it for the enjoyment of the occupant Prime Minister, so that it would provide a country retreat. So this always makes me smile. In my role as public trustee, I am the custodian trustee of Chequers, which means the legal ownership of Chequers rests with me. So I didn't know this was part of the role when I applied for the job, and I had an email one day saying, by the way, Sarah, and I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. So it is a fabulous place to be part of. It's incredibly beautiful. It's steeped in history. It's amazing to me when I think about all the politicians over the last 100 years who have crossed that front door. And the first time I went, they gave me the postcode, and off I drove, and drove down a little country lane. Of course, it has to be unmarked for security. And I arrived at a barrier, and I literally felt as if a police officer appeared out of the hedge beside my car. And they had a machine gun, as you'd expect. And I wound down my window and I said, I'm Sarah Castle. Yes, Mom, we were expecting you. Please go to the front of the house. And as I drove down, it was, you know, a moment. You have moments in your life that you will never forget. And I swept into the drive at the front of the house, and all the staff were lined up on the step, very Downton Abbey. And I thought, right, Sarah, you need to exit this car now with decorum, and you need to stride across this drive and behave like the custodian trustee. And the staff were completely lovely. And I always enjoy a visit to Chequers. So, thank you, Matthias. I thought I'd share this with you because we as an office, me in my role as OS and PT, get involved with all kinds of people and some of our most notorious murderers. And all of you, I'm sure, have heard of Fred West. And I had the privilege in my role of administering his estate. And for a long time, we had many of his effects in our basement. And I don't know what I felt about that really in terms of the karma of that, but we've managed to move office during this lockdown period, and I'm glad to say that we don't have any of his effects anymore, so we haven't had to move them with us, which is a blessing. In my role as OS, I'm often appointed as advocate to the court. So we're appointed by the High Court often to act as advisors as to the law. And we were invited in those circumstances to appear in the case involving the Jamie Bulger killers. And they had made an application around their anonymity and in respect of their new identities. So as you can imagine, that was a very interesting hearing to be part of. One of our more recent cases was representing the spy Skripal that I'm sure you will have heard of in connection with the Salisbury poisoning case. Mr. Skripal was in a coma, and I was called upon to represent him and stand in his shoes as the Atomic Weapon Authority wished to take a blood sample. Mr. Skripal was in a coma, therefore not able to give his own consent or instructions, and I gave instructions on his behalf and consented to the sample being taken. So you can see the variety and the high profile nature that of some of the cases that I become involved with. I think a very important part of my work is involved with serious medical treatment cases as part of the Court of Protection. And I set up this year a pilot out of hours service because our clients don't always have a crisis within office hours. Judges have to be called upon to be part of hearings and make decisions in the middle of the night. And I felt it was very important that the OS was representing the protected party in those circumstances. Mm-hmm. I have a fantastic group of lawyers who do this work in-house. They are very experienced and very well regarded in their field. And if I'm not representing the protected party, because there may be a family member who's fulfilling the role of litigation friend, then I will often be appointed as advocate to the court in these cases. And it's these cases for me that usually make the news at 10 or appear in the press. And I wanted to share a few of those groundbreaking cases that may resonate with you. So the case of Tony Bland, who was critically injured in the Hillsborough disaster, the OS represented him, and it was all about the court taking the decision to withdraw life-sustaining treatment as there was no prospect of recovery for Mr. Bland. Similarly, PC Paul Briggs, who was injured in the course of his duty. That was another groundbreaking case at the time, and that was about withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, although actually he could have lived with his injuries, but he really couldn't face that prospect. And at the time, that was a very important case. That leads me to my next slide, and I refer there to the case of Re MSP, and that's been in the press over the summer. Some of you may have heard about it. I made history again, if I can say that, because I was the first official solicitor to represent myself in court. I've always enjoyed my advocacy. This case came to me as part of the out of hours pilot when I received a call one Friday evening by the duty High Court judge and said, "Sarah, can you be part of this hearing that's taking place in 5 minutes?" I said, "Of course." And I was on that call as part of the hearing until midnight that night. Just to share a little bit with you, that involved a 35-year-old man who was a graduate, a grade A student, who was a strapping 6'3" rugby playing chap, but had experienced terrible abdominal problems over the previous 10 years. And he was literally a shadow of his former self. And he'd been very clear that if it came to it and he needed a permanent stoma, or sometimes referred to as a colostomy bag, then he couldn't face that prospect. And regrettably, he found himself in that situation, having received emergency surgery. The surgeons had no choice but to fit that stoma. And the question then came before the court that Friday night, whether he should be brought round from his induced coma and should be given life-sustaining treatment, or whether he should be allowed to die. It's one of those cases that I think will stay with me for the rest of my career. We heard very moving and compelling evidence from his parents, both on that Friday evening and the Monday. The case was adjourned over to the Monday so that it could be heard in open court. I had to stand in his shoes, and I believe that there was compelling evidence that the protected party's wishes should be upheld, as did his parents, and the judge found that it was in the best interest for MSP for the life-sustaining treatment to be withdrawn. But that gives an illustration of the very difficult and challenging, ethically challenging questions and cases that I get involved with. So having shared that with you, I'd like to now change tack a little bit and talk specifically about leadership. And I want to pose this question to you. What do you think of when you think of female leaders? And I'd like to show two images for you. So the first one, if we move to it, Matteo, thank you. The first one is the spitting image puppet of Margaret Thatcher with her cabinet. And I know Spitting Images is back with us on BritBox, but I don't know how many of you remember it first time round. But I was a fan, I have to say, and I love this image of Margaret Thatcher in her shirt and tie with her cabinet. She had more testosterone than the rest of them put together. But that's certainly one image that we will have about being a female leader. And the second image is the wonderful Jacinda Ardern, who's the Premier in New Zealand. And she, to me, is a fantastic, inspirational image of a female leader, and just look at her smile. She is the real deal, I think. And I've only just found this out recently, actually, that she was a civil servant in the UK for a while. She worked in the Cabinet Office during the end of Tony Blair's administration and the transfer into Gordon Brown's. But she went back to New Zealand in 2018 and stood as an MP, and the rest, they say, is history. So, what are the challenges of being a female leader, and how can they be overcome? So, I just want to share with you my ideas, my thoughts, if we move on to the next slide, Matteo. And it's by no means exhaustive, but this is what springs to my mind. I think the challenges are always being taken seriously as a woman, and I think it's less so now than when I started my career, but I still think there's a little bit of that around, and I certainly came up against that as a young female lawyer striding into court, and I felt I had to continually prove myself by performing and achieving outcomes, and maybe in a slightly different way than my male counterparts. I think it's right that women have challenges around juggling work alongside life. Certainly in my home, I'm responsible for lots of juggling. Not to say that men don't do it as well, but I think certainly I see that as a challenge. I think as women have their children, the impact of career breaks, it is a challenge to keep the momentum of your career going, particularly as you can have up to a year with each child. I'm very happy to say that it's far more acceptable and common for men to have paternity leave. And so certainly in my office, it's becoming a shared time out, which is fantastic. Being yourself as a woman, I think, is a challenge. I want to share with you that when I was thinking of applying to be the OS, I was talking to my then boss about that. And I said, you know, I think I'm going to have to tone it down a bit in terms of how I may look a bit and how I present. And he gave me some really good advice. He said to me, Sarah, I think that would be a big mistake. I think you are what you are. People, you know, respond to that. And I think you need to be yourself. And I decided that that was very good advice. And if the Ministry of Justice didn't like it, then they could not have me. And I think that gave me confidence going into that situation. And I think women are very good at thinking they can't take the next step until they've ticked every box in the job description of any new role. And I'm very mindful of that now when leading my current team, to basically encourage a slightly different approach and allowing yourself to grow into a role rather than having everything sussed on day one. So how can these challenges be overcome? Well, in my view, you have to have a supportive work environment, and I'm certainly trying to create that for my department now. As I've said, not feeling that you need to know everything before you can progress, but knowing that you have the potential. And identifying other leaders, female or male, as role models and possible mentors. And I think all of this is with a large dose of courage. I think you have to have courage in your career and courage as a leader. So moving on, Matteo, thank you. So I wanted to share with you some some of my thoughts about my personal leadership journey. I felt I was quite late to the party. I would have loved to have been part of a leadership program such as this. And I think you have got a fantastic opportunity here. I only started to act on my potential once I was a qualified solicitor. I then began to be proactive, just instinctively setting up new initiatives. I really wanted to have trainees in my then team. I was given the green light for that, and I organised it, recruited, and then became the trainee supervisor. I loved that, and I'm still in touch with my trainees today. I think I undertook a lot of informal management in my workplace far before I formally had the job. I became the person you would go to in the team for advice, and that did stand me in good stead when I took over as the managing and team principal in 2012. But I would absolutely say to you, I'm very much still on my leadership journey. So I've included this slide because I wanted to share with you my core values that I have anchored my current team in. And these are very personal and meaningful for me. And I try and anchor my whole team in these values. So they are purpose, humanity, openness, and togetherness. And as part of my commitment to these values, I have set up an OSPT monthly award where I recognise a junior member of the team who demonstrates one of these core values. I give them a voucher. I send a message to my whole department as to who's been awarded the award this month and why, and it is really well received. So if I just share with you a bit of background as to why these are meaningful for me. I believe in terms of purpose that my department is a centre of excellence. We are a very committed and experienced team. We have the respect of practitioners and judiciary. And I feel that we need to be proud of what we do, and we need to be ambitious in the work and the outcome that we achieve for our clients. I think humanity is very important. We need to show empathy towards each other as colleagues, but also empathy towards the clients who we represent. I represent the most vulnerable members of our society, and it's right that we have empathy for the situation that they're in, and that we demonstrate that respect to them, and that we treat each other with respect and ultimately with fairness. We're very much a team. There's no one more important than one person in our office. Everyone is important. None of us could do it on our own, and togetherness really brings that message home. We're part of a string of people in the chain who all have to work together to make it happen. And in terms of openness, we have to be honest and we have to act with integrity. We are nothing if we do not have our reputation and integrity. So, Matteo, if we move on. So, growing new leaders. I love nothing more than working with new leaders. And I share something that my mother-in-law, who's an ex-teacher, shared with me recently. And she said from, very early age, in her view, in her classes of 5-year-olds, she would know who the potential leaders of the future were. And I think that's probably right. We begin to have leadership opportunities, certainly in our education, whether we've been sports captains, head of house, prefects, head boy, head girl. These are fantastic opportunities at an early stage. Then coming to university, you have more opportunities to be part of committees, to lead clubs, and importantly, to be part of this leadership program. I think those of you on the call who are part of this are going to have a massive head start in terms of your career and leadership journey. I certainly have introduced apprenticeships into OSPT. I think they are a fantastic way to grow new leaders. I have both legal apprenticeships and non-legal apprenticeships, and you can qualify now as a solicitor through the apprenticeship route. And I think it's a very interesting alternative to the traditional route, because you can avoid some of the student debt, and you can work alongside achieving your qualifications. I'm also always looking for shared opportunities across the Ministry of Justice, and I'm part of a leadership programme there with staff from across that department. So thank you, Matteo. So what do I do to nurture my staff? Well, when any member of my team goes on holiday, we look towards more junior members of staff to stand in for them and to act up into their positions. So that's a great development opportunity. We also give opportunities for maternity leave, etc., for a more prolonged period. And I like to promote from within. So I like to give career opportunities and progression from within the department wherever possible. I also encourage mentoring from both within my department and from outside. I think it's fantastic often to get an outside perspective on personal development. And I also encourage staff to look for secondment opportunities outside of OSPT, and sometimes it's with a heavy heart, because I actually want to keep them close and keep them working for us. But I actually think it's a win-win, because it's wonderful to see staff who have lots of potential to spread their wings and to watch their careers. And if they decide to come back to us, then they bring the learning back with them. So I always try and have a positive spin on it. And it's always great to watch people maximise their potential. I've recently set up a new opportunity, and that is I've set up a shadow board that will sit alongside my main management board. And the idea is that staff members from every grade will sit on the shadow board. And I've been very keen to have a very diverse group in terms of gender and race, because I think it's important that that filters in to the overall management decision making. So what type of leader am I? Am I a motivational leader? And I think it's a really, really difficult question to answer yourself. And ultimately, it's a matter for those who work with me to respond. But I wanted just to share some principles with you. I think I'm firm, fair and friendly. I like to be very warm with my staff. I like to be very approachable. My rules are this: I try to consult on as many issues as possible. I make no secret that I like to invest in people. And very importantly, if I make a promise to my staff, I like to keep it. I think that that fosters trust, and behind every successful relationship, professional or personal, is trust. And I take responsibility for any mistake. So any member of my team who makes a mistake, I own it. I will manage that for them. I will support them through it. And I think it's very important that there's no culture of blame or fear. That's the last thing I'd want in my department. And I think you have to have a good sense of humour. A lot of what I deal with is heavy end stuff. It's very serious. But if you can smile through most things, then that will stand you in good stead. So my next slide is very close to my heart, and that's having a very diverse office. I think it's right that as many voices within my team are heard, and I want every member of my team to have a sense of belonging. So, leadership lessons. So, I wish I'd been more strategic about my career. It's just kind of happened. But I think those of you on the leadership program have a wonderful opportunity to plan it better, to be more strategic. I wish I'd had a mentor from early on and throughout my career. I would say to always have a mentor. I have a mentor now. I have a professional career mentor, as well as I have a reverse race mentor, because I'm trying to get that aspect of my leadership right. I thought being a solicitor was enough, but it really isn't. It's not enough, in my view, just to have that professional label and qualification. You can never have too many development opportunities, so seek them out. You'll always learn and grow as a result. And networking and maintaining good professional relationships is absolutely key. I think the successful business that I do is down to relationships. Reputation and integrity is everything. Never compromise that. Play a straight bat. It will really hold you in good stead. And there's no substitute for hard work. We all have to work hard if we are to achieve in life. And I'd like to leave you with this quote from Whoopi Goldberg. And she said, "We're here for a reason. I believe a bit of the reason is to throw little torches out to lead people through the dark." And I think that is well said, Whoopi, and a lovely way to conclude my presentation.
Wow.
So I feel I've been talking a lot, so I'm very, very happy to answer any questions.
I just want to say before we go on, thank you very much, Sarah. There's some excellent nuggets there for everybody to take on board, both in terms of learning about what you do, your role, you as a person, and your leadership style. So thank you very much. And I'm sure others will thank as well as we go along, but now open to questions. And if we can realize there's a lot of you on the call. So the first thing is maybe just to raise your hand either on screen or through the little hand icon, and we'll go around that way, if that's okay. All right. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking out, if you want to use the chat, please feel free to do that, and Matteo will manage as we go along. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, Megan, yes.
Great. Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for your talk. It was really interesting, and thanks for your time. I'm Megan. I'm on the executive committee for the Education Society and also the head production team for the student radio station here. So I was wondering about your decision-making processes and how they differ between when you're advocating and making decisions for others who may be particularly vulnerable, and then yourself as well. So that difference. And then if I can add a second bit, when you're dealing with moral battles and decision making, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, that's such a good question, Megan, because as a lawyer, you're used to receiving instructions and just acting on them, you know, advising, and then really, you know, just conveying that to the court. So certainly my example around MSP, it was very, very strange to be giving instructions to myself. That situation was not lost on me, and I've reflected on it a lot since. I think when I'm giving direction on any case, in my role as the official solicitor, I'm obviously making evidence-based decisions, and I'm looking at the test is what's in the best interest of P, and what evidence do I have that shows me what type of person they are, what they would have wanted. So I'm taking into account as much evidence as possible. That's often coming from family members. I think that's such an important source of information. Of course, that can be conflicting sometimes as well. So the answer is it's not straightforward. It's challenging, but I have to work hard to understand the person who I'm representing, and understanding what I believe their wishes and feelings would be, and to base that on evidence. But these cases are not for the faint-hearted. Throughout my career, I've been involved with vulnerable people, vulnerable children and families in my child protection work, and now as the OS in all kinds of different situations of vulnerability. So I think I have an empathy for vulnerable people in our society. I've never wanted to practice as a commercial lawyer. I've always been interested in people's stories and what's led them to the place that they're involved in litigation. So it's a bit of a long answer, Megan, but it's not an exact science, and you just have to do your best, and you have to use your experience and make the best decisions that on the evidence available. But a really good question, Megan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you think reflection is a good resource to use, reflecting back in terms of your own decision making, and that would you encourage that based on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's can I sleep, am I comfortable with it, am I worried about it, can I sleep at night, and I will have almost a gut reaction to whether the decision is right or not. But I will try and make the decision as carefully as possible. But I know if I've done the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be guided as well by our own moral compass in life, and this role certainly at times tests that. But I also have the benefit of having really experienced practitioners who work with me. So ultimately it's me making the decision, but it's in a consultative process.
Yeah.
But there will be those occasions when I woke up in the middle of the night and have to give a view. And you have to do the best you can for that person in that terrible situation, in that crisis, best on as a judge would, on the best available information.
Sure. We have a question from Liji online. Thank you so much, Sarah. That's really interesting. She's a final year philosophy and politics student, and she found it very intriguing when you talk about ethical cases. Could you say a bit more about that?
Well, I think end-of-life cases are particularly challenging, and what was so difficult about this particular example that I'll use to expand and illustrate the ethical dilemma is that people in our community across the world can live very happily with colostomy bags and stomas. You know, people adapt very well and lead full, fulfilling lives. But in this particular case, MSP could not contemplate that. And that was his, you know, he only lost capacity when he, you know, was in his coma, and up until that point he'd retained capacity and was clear for a long time with the professionals looking after him and his family that it's not a position that he could contemplate. And therefore that to me was the real ethical dilemma. I knew what I needed to do legally, but that was difficult. When he was, some would think, a young man in terms of his age, but he was not the man he wanted to be or the man he had been. He had gone from being a strapping rugby playing type chap to a very frail, poorly man. And I think, you know, as I said to you, a case I will never forget, because he could have gone on, but certainly the judge was convinced that his autonomy should prevail. And I think that was the ethical point and the legal point, actually. Should someone's view, wishes and feelings override anything else? And in that particular case, that was the decision of the court. I don't know if that helps, or whether you want to ask anything in addition to that.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your talk. And I think it takes a lot of courage to apply for a position when it's been a history of 150 years of men in the position. And I was wondering where you found the courage and confidence to apply for that role. In a sense, were there people who supported you and encouraged you to do that? Or what do you think was the difference between you and other women who applied for that role, that it was you who got it?
Yes, oh gosh, I can certainly give you my take on it, Marta. So I hadn't had a job interview for a long time, and I thought I would challenge myself by testing myself in the market. So I kind of set myself a personal goal, because I'd been very comfortable and very happy actually in local government, but I felt I had a big job in me. I maybe as you all go through your careers, you'll at times feel that. And I was getting, you know, I was about the right age, and if I was going to do something else, I needed to do it in terms of timing. So I started to just very gently look at positions. And I'd actually sat in this very spot that I'm sitting now, actually, in my kitchen in Oxfordshire. And I, over the Christmas of 2018, 2019, I saw this advert, the role of the OS, and I thought, I think I can do that, you know, as you scroll down. So my husband encouraged me to apply, and you know, off the application went. And I honestly can say to you, I had no expectation of being successful, and I had to go through various stages, and I kept getting a little bit further and a little bit further, and you know, I don't know where I found the courage, but I thought I'll give it a go. And because I was happy in my previous role, I think I probably had some confidence with that I didn't have to change jobs. Anyway, at the final panel interview, which was, you know, quite a robust process, I got to ask questions of the panel, and I said to the chairman, what's your vision for your new official solicitor? And he said, we want something different. And it was only at that point did I think they might give it to me. You know, it had been very ably undertaken by men, you know, a lot of them male barristers actually. And I think that it was just the right time for something different. And I then had to wait several weeks before I knew the outcome of the final process. And it actually came through very late one night on email. And I stared at the screen for a while in disbelief. But I was incredibly proud of the fact that I got that far, and that I would be the first lady. And you know, I want to do my best with it. You know, I want to certainly, for the people, the women who work for me, see me as someone who's broken through that glass ceiling. And I'll share something else with you that's very pleasing for me, is that I also sit on a board in the Ministry of Justice with other female directors. You know, I'd say 2/3 men, 1/3 women. And I find myself having a lot of synergy with those women around the table. We are not the Margaret Thatcher style type of leader. We are far more Jacintas, and there's a real warmth from the other ladies, and a sense of togetherness and community. So having had the courage to apply, I find myself with a lot of like-minded women in those senior positions.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think it's really important to follow on that feeling of greater role that you had within, that you mentioned. That's really good to hear.
Thank you.
You mentioned, especially for female leaders, that confidence is at times an issue, especially in your role where you're very dependent on kind of having the appropriate evidence, and yeah, you have to make some very tough decisions. Where do you get your confidence from, and how do you balance not over preparing, as also you mentioned that can be a barrier, but preparing enough to kind of do the job well, if that makes sense?
You know, Carolyn, I think it's about, a lot of it is experience. I think I've earned my stripes on the front line a bit. You know, I think being a child protection lawyer has really stood me in good stead. There's no substitute for, you know, being involved with families in crisis, and you think you've heard it all, and then something else will appear, however long you've been doing the work. So I think it's about having a good foundation. I think I've got the type of personality that I can switch off, you know, so not being, you know, having the experience, having a good foundation of my profession, having people around me professionally and personally who ground you, and just knowing, I think, that of what's right and not. I can't put my finger on it really. It's a skill that I think has to be within you, but then you perfect. But I think in the type of work I do, it's not like looking at a commercial contract. You know, it's having empathy, I think, with the people who I've always represented, and wanting to achieve the best outcome. And therefore now in my current role, I have a sense about what's right for them, and doing my best for them.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. It was really inspiring. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Jess. I'm a law student and the Vice President of Trevelyan College. And my question for you is, really, I've found in my leadership positions, I start to question whether my decisions are accepted by some people or rejected because of for being a woman, and find myself sometimes leaning to my peers who are also in leadership positions who are male to kind of confirm my ideas to those people who perhaps are rejecting them because of who I am. So I'm kind of wondering if you've had situations like that, and whether you deal with it in a reassuring yourself and being confident to those people that your decisions are appropriate or final, or do you kind of lean to those that support you to reiterate your decisions? I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does, Jess. I think it's a really good question, and I can't say it's not a situation I don't recognise, because, you know, I think it's hard, and I think I still, to an extent, feel I have to prove myself by my abilities to have an equal voice, which is crackers, really. But I think it's there's something within us, I think, that we feel that it's about the point about being taken seriously. But when you do have the courage of your convictions and feel that this is what you want to say, you feel very strongly about it, then I'd also say that my experience is that it's very well received by both men and women. And it is a confidence thing. It's you have to, I mean, when I first arrived in the Ministry of Justice and sat around that director's table, I thought it was alien to me. It was a definite step up in you know, what was being discussed, and would I be able to make a valuable contribution? But actually, very quickly, I felt I could. And that was because my colleagues were making me feel at ease, and I knew that the chair was very encouraging. I think that's what really helps. I think if you've got some people who you know are rooting for you in that situation, then that can make a big difference. So I think that goes back to my networking and relationship point. You know, if in your scenario, in your leadership roles at the moment, if you have good relationships with people because you deliver what you say you're going to deliver, and they trust you and they warm to you, they see you as a person who's approachable and you know, achieves outcomes, that's the best thing in them to being able to speak up and have the confidence.
Thank you so much for being here, for your talk, Amélie. I just wanted to ask, it was linked to your answer to Carolina's question, how you managed to switch off from such a difficult job. I was thinking of the child protection, your child protection, work. If you had any advice linked to that, how you managed to separate your life from your job?
I think my best answer is, I think to be a good litigator, you have got to be forensically curious. And the cases that I've done then and now, I'm interested in the forensic story. So I see it as that, and I don't try not to become too personally involved in it. And I when I'm looking to recruit new lawyers, if they're not forensically curious, I don't think they'll make good litigators. So I think I've been able to separate it in that forensic interest and not for it to spill into my life. But I also I've got you know, a lovely family, and you know, I'll be coming off this call and then I'll be cooking the supper. So you know, I think normality and also not always not having all my friends in the law as well. You know, having a good mix of people who, you know, in your spare time you're not always speaking about law. So I think that's another thing that helps me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah. Again, it's been resonated through all the questions that you've been asked, that it was well received, and I think there's a lot we can take up from what you've said. And I really liked your quote that you've left us with, and I think that's an inspiration. Talking about courage is something, you know, that resonates, and I think you've said it's about experience, and most people on the Leadership Academy have the opportunity to practice, and you know, practice, and that leads to experience. And I think having their mentor to guide them and experience, as you've said, is really powerful. So thank you for bringing those to the front, and thank you for your very kind words about reconnecting with Durham and reconnecting with our students. We're very privileged to have you on our session tonight, and thank you for, you're incredibly busy and you've made time for us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And Chantal, it will be a very happy day when I can come to Durham and see everyone in person. So I'm hopeful that next year I'll be able to, you know, visit my lovely city. So that would be very nice.
Well, we open with great arms waiting for you and when things are different. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely meal with your family.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.